Hey guys, and welcome. I'm the Ogre Kendrick, and one of the things that I am passionate about is mixing stone cold truth, delightfully absurd fiction, and cutting edge dad jokes. To that end, I have taken the phrase exquisite corpse, and I've recorded 3 short and completely different explanations for what it supposedly means. Any or all of the 3 might be true, and any or all of the 3 might be false. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to go through them with an eagle's eye and peer through the vast lakes of deceit to find the hiding fish of truth to make your meal, all the while watching out for the pelican of silliness. Make your guesses, and I will reveal all at the end of the video. Here we go. Exquisite corpse is a term from architecture. At its best, architecture is a fascinating mixture of science and art, and great designs have the ability to be beautiful, breathtaking, or overpowering. At its worst, architecture is boring and, well, square. This tension between art and box brings us to our topic. In the world of architecture, a beautiful corpse refers to an architect's dream design, their pet project, the one they really pour their artistic soul into, but that will never be built. It's not uncommon for architects to spend years slowly creating, improving, and adding to their personal pet designs, even when they have little or no hope of ever seeing it built. There are 3 main mechanisms that lead to an exquisite corpse. The most common is the faceless companies who will actually use and make the buildings the architects design. They often prefer to keep things safe and normal and reject unusual designs, no matter how beautiful. Frequently, architects hold on to these rejected designs and continue to refine them. A second mechanism that leads to exquisite corpses are designs that, while magnificent, would be impossible or difficult to actually build. No, I'm not suggesting that architects are trying to create buildings like this. However, architects like to push the envelope of building styles and techniques, and they are occasionally designing things that simply aren't practical with current technology. A third cause is when architects intentionally create designs they know have no chance of being used simply because of their particular passion. The term was coined by 19th century architect Eric Morley, who is incredibly influential in the world of architecture, but almost unknown outside of it. In fact, he has often been called the Van Gogh of the architectural world, since his work was virtually ignored during his life, but is now considered spectacular. After being diagnosed with terminal cancer in 1853, he started putting his affairs in order. This included packing all his unbuilt designs into boxes. The boxes bore a label that said, "Here is a graveyard of exquisite corpses that never truly lived." When those designs were rediscovered years later, Morley became a legend and a hero to many famous architects that you may have heard of. To name just a few, Richard Rogers, Frank Gehry, and Norman Foster have all listed Morley as an influence in interviews. Ironically, Morley was cremated and left no corpse, exquisite or otherwise. Exquisite corpse has to do with art. It was based on, or at least inspired by, a game called Consequences, in which players wrote sentences based on rules, and then those sentences were combined to create a poem or story. In essence, people were collaborating on a shared story or poem without knowing what the others had written. In 1925, surrealist painter André Breton created a visual version of this game. Artists would take turns creating a part of the drawing without seeing what other people had added. One common method was to fold a piece of paper into 3 parts and have 3 different artists independently draw the top, middle, and bottom of a body without seeing what the previous person had done. This could lead to some hilarious results, since the different parts of the drawing would have wildly different ideas, visions, and styles. Being surrealists, this was right up their alley. Sadly, I filmed that entire sequence before remembering that I have 0 artistic talent. Suffice it to say that the ones created by real artists, or even by actually different people, are far more varied and interesting. The fact that each artist was adding to something that they could not see led to some truly creative and unusual works. Some of the artists valued it specifically because it freed them up to try new things or break out of their normal styles. Frida Kahlo especially loved the game and was apparently infamous for her, sexually interesting contributions. The game is still played today, and here are some modern-day examples. The name Exquisite Corpse is now applied to many styles of collaborative works, including written word, which is ironic, since it was developed as a visual version of an existing writing-based game. Most amusing to me is the novel Naked Came the Manatee, which is a mystery novel in which each chapter was written by a different writer from Miami. Because Florida, I guess. Exquisite Corpse is the name of a perfume advertising campaign that ultimately failed. Advertising is the art of convincing people to want what you are selling. While some products are aimed exclusively at one small target audience, most companies try to advertise to as wide a group as possible, meaning that they run many simultaneous campaigns. Take these two commercials. They are very different in tone and style and aimed at very different groups. One exploits the strong emotions of sports fandom, while the other promises the impossible, harmonious family time. But they are for the same product. Advertisers are always looking to find new markets to try to appeal to, so anytime a group, subculture, or demographic reaches a certain size or visibility, they risk becoming the object of marketing. For example, while it had been around for quite some time, the goth subculture experienced increased visibility in the mid-1990s. The perfume division of Dior decided this might be a lucrative market for them and started an experimental campaign which they called Exquisite Corpse. Dior created a run of posters and billboards that they strategically placed near goth clubs in New York and Los Angeles. The posters featured models, a color scheme, a font, and a slogan that they thought would appeal to the goth subculture. The slogan, "Even death is no reason not to smell exquisite," is especially wow and is pretty strong evidence that they didn't understand their target audience at all. There were plans to expand to more cities and possibly other advertising media had the campaign been successful. Successful, however, it was not. The main goth scene ignored it except to deride it as fundamentally misunderstanding and misrepresenting their culture. Some analysts have suggested that it did play well with the outer edges of the scene, especially with what are often called mall goths, who appropriated the look to be edgy but were never really a part of the culture. However, at least at that time, that group was not large enough to save the campaign, and Dior pulled the plug after just a few months. The entire thing, from conception to execution, was exquisitely bad. And we are back. So which ones rang true and which ones are totally cracked? Time to lock in your answers. If you haven't already, now would be a great time to pause and put your best guesses in the comments. Okay, our first contestant, from the world of architecture, a passion project that will never be built. This one was completely a lie. Number 2, a collaborative drawing game created by the Surrealists. That one is completely true. And finally, number 3, perfume advertising aimed at the goth subculture. That one is also completely false. There you go, just one truth this week. There are actually several novels and songs with the title Exquisite Corpse as well, but none of them seemed interesting enough for a full segment. Some of the drawings created by the Surrealists using this game are truly amazing in several senses of the word amazing. I wanted to include some of them in the video, but I could not find any where I wouldn't have to pay for a license. But what I can do is post some links in the description to the museum exhibitions. If this idea interests you at all, I strongly encourage you to check them out. Anyways, that's all for today. Please let me and the algorithm know what you thought, and hopefully, I'll see you next time.